national television just brought on some crazy boomers to tell Gen Z everything that they're doing wrong in this world and in this life and how everything is their problem. So let's look at this because we need to talk about it. There's a lot here to discuss.
Right now, you just won't hire Gen Z employees.
No, we don't. It's been a nightmare with 95% of the ones that we have hired. I once terminated an employee and her father called me 24 hours later asking how he could help get his daughter's job back. I'd never heard of that before. When I've lost my job, I didn't tell my parents to go call for me.
Daddy didn't call and get your job back?
He did not.
Yeah. Were you ever fired?
So there's this whole narrative around Gen Z and younger generations are weak because they have parental support, which I think is a crazy, crazy, crazy mindset. They're basically saying, I did it this way. I had to struggle. I had to have it hard. So you should have it hard too. We've all heard that, right? That is a really messed up mindset. Just because you have it hard, what does that mean? Why would you want other people to have it hard? It's this like, I've had trauma, so I want you to have trauma too, to know what it feels like, because they think it made them better. So that's the problem. They're sitting there wealthy and they're sitting there being like, look, this made me better because I had to struggle. That's not true. They got all those things because an economy was way different and way more giving to them back then than it is now. It's not the struggle that made them successful. What it was is the economy. And they have this false causation versus correlation thing. So they think just because the economy was going well, that they had some sort of personal responsibility, and whatever happened to them was the reason why they're successful. A lot of humans have it, but it's completely, completely wrong. Also, did he just admit to age discrimination on national television?
65% of employers say they have fired a Gen Z employee, and 50% of them say they've fired them real recently. Have you had to get rid of Gen Z employees?
That is absolutely wild to me. Most employers are Gen X and boomers. And if they saying that they're firing all the Gen Z people, and there's actually a great statistic that just came out that says that 80% of hiring managers think that Gen Z has a bad attitude or lack of work ethic. So with that kind of mentality that boomers have, they're not going to hire Gen Z. And then what happens? Then you see a lot of Gen Z without jobs. Then you see these Gen Z struggling to get jobs, which is crazy because, once again, the boomers are part of the problem. They are the problem. They're the ones not hiring. If you want Gen Z to come to work and work hard, give them jobs. It's very, very, very simple. There's 3 TikToks that I've done TikToks about, talking about Gen Z kids that had looked for jobs for literally months and months and months, years even sometimes, and couldn't find anything. That's after racking up hundreds of thousands of dollars of college debt. That's after racking up internships. That's after doing all these different programs to make them competitive in the job market. And then they come out here just to get shunned because of their age, based off of boomers thinking that they spend too much time on social media and are weak because their mom and dad try to help them when they have problems in this world. Don't you want a strong family unit? Don't you want a strong group and tribe of people advocating for you? Isn't that kind of a good thing? America is so individualistic, and it came from back in the day, people had to commute to their jobs to factories. That was a huge, huge, huge part of the American workforce back in the day, was factory work. So people had to leave the family unit, drive into cities so they could work in the factories, and then drive back and or kind of stay in the cities. That's where the city life came from. And because of that, the American family unit has been breaking down over and over and over again. I mean, every generation you get, the more the family unit breaks down. And it came from capitalism, basically. You see other countries that don't have capitalistic societies living 3 generations in one house or multiple generations in one house. Now, this one's funny because she doesn't blame the boomers that are not hiring Gen Z. She blames something completely different.
Absolutely, and one of the reasons is social media. It's hard to do your job and work if you're on Instagram all day. You have to actually put your phone down and do some work.
So who do you think gave Gen Z a phone and internet addiction? Do you think it was maybe the parents that were shoving iPads and screens in their face, telling them that they want some peace and quiet and to leave the parents alone for a second? Yeah, it's probably that. You don't just develop a phone an internet addiction without having a phone and internet to be addicted to? And who do you think provided an absolute toddler those screens and those materials? Maybe someone from that generation. Just a thought. And then they get upset that they have hooked these kids, they hooked their own kids on devices for all these years, and they get upset that they're now dependent on devices. It's very, very boomer, right? The boomer is like, we're going to do something that harms you, but we're not going to help you get out of it. And we're going to blame your lack of inherent strength and call you weak for not being able to overcome developmental things that they did to Gen Z as kids. So I think it's just really, really fascinating that that's where they're going. So then on this clip, which is once again absolutely unhinged, they bring in a Gen Z girl or woman that is not giving the most to her job. And that's what she says. She's like, I'm not going to bust my butt to give the most to my job. And let's see how this goes down.
Does not represent corporate America or corporate women, or certainly Black women in corporate America. How would you know if you've never tried to go above and beyond?
I have tried it.
And it's failed you? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, corporate has failed me.
So the problem is there's something called paying your dues. And so when you say it's failed you, how long did you give it? 3 months? 6 months? I think you're failing yourself.
So the thing with paying your dues, it's fine and good to pay your dues when you can afford to pay your dues. When you have your Maslow hierarchy of needs and your food, water, and shelter taken care of, then you can have higher level thinking. Then you can start to think more creatively. Then you can make some more sacrifices for your long-term health, wealth, and approach to life. However, when you're in survival mode, you can't do that. When your food, water, shelter, etc. is not taken care of, some of your basic level things are not taken care of, your brain is in survival mode, and literally the aperture of your eyes narrowed down and your peripheral vision is actually gone, and the eyes are a huge part of your brain. Fun fact. And so when that's gone, you're literally biologically focused on things that are right in front of you. Think about an animal when it gets scared or feels like it's going to be attacked. It's fight or flight. And that's perpetually what an entire generation are in, fight and flight right now, because they don't have their basic needs met. So when Gen X and boomers come on and say, you need to pay your dues, you need to work harder, you need to just stick it out. Well, yeah, no shit. It would be great if these Gen Z and millennials could stick it out. But the thing is, they biologically and physically can't because they are not having their needs met. Now, why was it okay for the boomers to do that and the Gen Zs can't do that? Well, because once again, of the economy, right? Everything's more expensive. The cost of living is exorbitant. They do not have cheap GI bills to go and buy houses. They do not have affordable houses to buy, even if they had a low interest rate to buy them. It's a high interest rate. It's very expensive. And there's no way that with all the student loan debt, which corporations are allowed to burden our entire young population with all that student loan debt, they're not going to get freaking loans. You're just not going to get loans. So they're saddling them with all these debts. And then these kids can't get mortgages and loans to buy houses. And even if they could, once again, it's unaffordable because boomers are not going anywhere. Boomers have by far the largest amount of houses in the US, and they're holding on to them. They're not necessarily downsizing. They're literally just holding on to them because their interest rates are so low. So we have a inventory supply of houses that are not able to be bought and sold like they were in boomerland, in boomer economy back in the day. So these literally kids are not only saddled with debt, not only not able to afford a house, not only not able to afford the interest payment on a loan, they're also having shitty job offers when they get out of college because boomers have such a bad attitude and say that Gen Z has a bad attitude. They don't want to work. Well, yes, they don't want to work they don't want to work and having to still be in survival mode. Why would you want to overextend yourself if you know that you could double the amount that you worked, you could double your salary, and you still wouldn't be able to afford it? It is just a recipe for disaster and a recipe for overwhelm. When you literally are looking at the mountain and you feel like you can't even scale that mountain, you give up prematurely. You give up before you even start with the mountain. And then let's just say you do slip by. Let's just say you are able to fight for your survival and that you do have your basic needs met and you go and live with your parents or whatever, right? So then you're fighting and scrapping to get out of survival mode, and only to get fired. And then your parents who are helping you out of survival mode call your boss and ask to get your job back to help give you a little boost up. And then they bitch about you on national television and they call you weak. Like, that is absolutely wild to me. We have to look at some of the statistics of the economy versus then and now, and this one does a good job of it.
Here's the real reason why Gen Z doesn't want to work. Kids these days, they don't want a hard days of work at all. They just want to quit their jobs and be on social media all day long. Yeah, it's actually a lot more complicated than that. We want to quit because we're being taken advantage of, put in huge amounts of debt, and not paid properly. See, because while you were working in the 80s, your salary could actually afford you a decent lifestyle, but let me just show you the numbers. Since 1970, home prices have increased by 1,608%. If we compare minimum wages from then and now, in 2022, minimum wage is 40% lower than what it should be compared to 1970. But anyways, the same home that cost you $100,000 in 1970 costs you $710,000 now. All the while, wages have remained stagnant. Okay, sure, but that's just the way things are now. We had struggles too. Live with it. Yeah, kind of hard to live with it when college has increased by 2,000%. Tuition used to be $1,700 in 1970, and in 2020, it's about $38,000 a year. Follow for more.
True. And also follow for more.